Now, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing the FAA administrator, and maybe I'm glad that Senator Feinstein has left. She played an amazing role in this whole thing. I've known the FAA administrator for a few years. I first met him actually, and I actually had to do a fact check, but it was actually January 23rd, 2012, when we broke ground on a major expansion program in Fort Lauderdale. And then a few years later, I was working in Rhode Island and became friends with, at the time, my favorite senator, an amazing guy, Jack Reed. And I think, although even though the senator has left, I think I've got a new favorite senator going forward. But Senator Reed talked about, and I'll turn it over to Administrator Huerta, he had such praise for the administrator and said that he has never met anyone that had such a commitment, such a passion for the safety, for the efficiency, and the advancement in the aviation industry and for the national airspace system. So without further ado, and again, I've learned at a number of locations, this guy has coast-to-coast appeal. Delighted to have him here. Please welcome Southern California's own Administrator Michael Huerta.
Well, good afternoon, Ontario. I can't tell you how happy I am to be home here in Southern California. You know, some of you may know that I grew up just a few miles down the road in a community that was at the time called Rubidoux. It's now the city of Huerta Valley. And the mayor is there. And over the years, my work has taken me to many different parts of the world, but I'll tell you something. The Inland Empire will always be home. I remember growing up here in the 1960s and 70s, and you know, at the time, I remember we used to hear from a lot of the promoters of the region that we're an hour away from amazing beaches. We're an hour away from Los Angeles. We're an hour away from the mountains. We're an hour away from the desert. And to my friends and me, that meant, well, so we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. But you know, this region has done an amazing job of stripping itself of that middle of nowhere moniker. You know, local leaders here were not interested in just being a bedroom community of Los Angeles. You all realized that to control your own destiny, you had to actively build your own economy. And build it you did. And in the process, you were incredibly smart. Smart about attracting a diverse foundation of businesses to this area. And just as important, you've been smart about establishing the right kind of zoning regulations around Ontario International Airport. Now, aviation is about 5% of our country's gross domestic product. It accounts for about 12 million American jobs. And you in the Inland Empire understand that an airport is a vital economic engine for a region such as this. And as a result of the forethought you've shown and the deliberate planning, that middle of nowhere moniker, well, you are right in the middle of everywhere. In recent years, you decided that you needed to gain local control over the local airport, that was the next logical step in this investment in the region. Now, when folks here first started talking about assuming local control of Ontario Airport, a lot of people go to Vegas from here, and I think it's fair to say that the betting line in Las Vegas probably would have been somewhat against the success of this venture. This is an incredibly difficult thing to do. It's a monumental undertaking with scores of moving parts that all have to fuse together perfectly in order to enable this to happen. The first thing you had to do was get local consensus, to get all of the people in this region on board with the idea that you wanted to operate the airport locally. Then you had to form an authority. And then you had to reach an agreement with the city of Los Angeles to part with an asset that it had run for nearly half a century. And then, once that agreement was formed, you had to assemble a leadership team, a team that is capable of crafting a vision for this airport and piloting it into the years ahead. Now, we've been through a few of these at the FAA, and we know that this is a process that can be derailed at any point in the process. And there were more than a few people, and I would suspect some in this room, that predicted that it would be derailed. And in fact, the fact that it was not really speaks to the determination, the drive, and the commitment of everyone in this room. And it also speaks not only to the regional commitment, but to the commitment of Mayor Garcetti, Deborah L. Flint, and the City of Los Angeles to embrace and to help affect a significant change. Now, at the FAA, I often talk about the importance of flexibility and collaboration to our success here at the FAA. It's critical to everything that we do to maintain this system, which is the safest in the world and the most efficient in the world, at the same time as being the world's largest. Flexibility and collaboration are also the key to steering you to where you are today with this airport. And it took the airports of everyone involved in this process, and the thank yous have been many, and I'm sure there are many that we have not recognized, but it really speaks to the teamwork that this all has involved. Now, Ontario, you are now the dog that caught the car. As of today, the public record shows that the Ontario International Airport Authority owns and operates Ontario International Airport. Yeah. And from this day on, you have an important responsibility. Your job isn't just to grow the airport. Your job is to maintain an airport that is safe for the traveling public. Your job is to maintain an airport that is publicly available to all users who want to use this airport. Your job is to ensure that you meticulously observe every requirement of our comprehensive commercial airport regulations. You have a tremendous responsibility to be good stewards of this important asset for the region. And you have the opportunity to do something very special, to define the future of this region. Now, your journey has been, and it will continue to be, incredibly challenging, sometimes enlightening, often frustrating, and very invigorating, and it's probably going to be those things all at once. But I think your future is a bright one, and so I think the question is this: what is the story that will be written for Ontario International Airport and the Inland Empire of Southern California? Marketing and building up service at medium-sized airports like Ontario has never been an easy task, and the challenge is arguably only becoming more difficult. We forecast that much of the nation's passenger growth over the next 20 years will occur at the largest and busiest airports, largely as a result of the unprecedented level of consolidation that has taken place in the airline industry, with 4 major mergers just in the last 5 years. But with great challenges come tremendous opportunities. Here in the Inland Empire, a wide range of groups and interests have shown something that we've been talking about all afternoon, and that is you are incredibly good at working together in the region toward a common goal, and that is extremely important. And the region has an awful lot going for it. You've seen impressive economic growth, adding nearly 200,000 jobs over the last 5 years, and in this year on track to add another 50,000. Much of this growth reflects the region's traditional strength in logistics, but we're also seeing growth in healthcare, in manufacturing and other businesses. And this is important because a strong business base, which you have here in this region, translates to strong business demand for air transportation services. And economic growth for the region means that people want to go on vacation, and that's more demand for leisure travelers as well. Moreover, Ontario's location in the heart of the Inland Empire is an advantage for area residents who want to avoid languishing in that traffic that we sometimes like to talk about. So, if I were a betting man, back to those Vegas odds, I would say that the odds have flipped since this process first got started. And I would say that the smart money would be placed on Ontario International Airport to succeed and succeed very, very well. And I won't be surprised if in a decade or two we look back on this very occasion as a watershed moment in the history of this region. I wouldn't be surprised if we say this is the beginning of a stronger and more vibrant regional anchor than it is today. So I want to thank, on behalf of our team at the FAA, and we've got a great team, our airports office, who worked through all the details of this transaction. They're here. Our air traffic control team at Ontario Airport, the controllers and technicians whose job it is to ensure that the system is safe. Glenn Martin, our regional administrator, who represents the FAA here in Western Pacific. All of us on the FAA team have a commitment to ensuring that you succeed. And so, I would like to ask Ellen and Kelly to come up, and I'm pleased to present to you the airport transfer letter and operating certificate for Ontario International Airport.
Thank you, Administrator Huerta. You know, this is what we've been working for. This is very hard to get, and it's actually signed by the administrator of the FAA. That's huge. Thank you so much. Now, I want to share a backstory here because everyone's saying, how did you get the administrator of the FAA personally involved? Well, besides being a resident of the Inland Empire, which was extremely important, this is something a lot of people don't know. You know, former Mayor, where's Ron? Former Mayor Ron Loveridge is really Professor Ron Loveridge from the University of California at Riverside. And just a few years back, one of his students was a kid named Michael Huerta. Yeah. And fortunately, Dr. Loveridge had the foresight to give him an A. So when we needed to meet with Administrator Huerta and we needed that extra push over the finish line, all we needed was for Dr. Loveridge to remind our administrator of that A and all the assistance he gave him. No, really, the personal relationship, and we all know this is all about relationships. And I don't want to say that we would use that relationship, but we did. And here we are, it works. So Administrator Huerta, thank you so very much. Okay.